welcome to another episode of Bridge the Channel, your monthly video review from the Martin Center, bringing you the latest news from British politics, British foreign policy, Brexit, and generally an Atlanticist perspective on international news, international geopolitics, and how they affect Europe. We are still focusing a lot, of course, on the war in Ukraine. Unfortunately, I don't think this issue is going away anytime soon. It is also a pretty busy period with British politics here in Westminster. The country is now firmly in the middle of a so-called cost of living crisis. The prices of everything is going up, taxation is going up, and the Minister of Finance of the UK, Rishi Sunak, quite crucially also a person who was up until recently seen as an heir apparent to the leadership of the Conservative Party and the post of Prime Minister, is engulfed in a taxation scandal involving himself and his wife. It's generally not a good look for the Chancellor to be seen to be increasing taxes on everyone else while him and his family are trying to avoid taxes. We will be following this scandal perhaps later on in future episodes if we see how it affects the internal politics of the Conservative government. But for now, today's episode will be focused on Ukraine and the very high profile role that personalities in the British government are taking. Boris Johnson on the one hand and the Foreign Minister Liz Truss on the other. So let's now go see what we have today for you. Crisis in Ukraine, a British perspective on it, and of course how it affects Europe. So the big foreign policy news here in London is, of course, the visit that Boris Johnson made to Kiev and the meeting he had with President Zelensky and the now infamous walk both of them took in Kiev, which is fair to say really broke the internet. It's not very common that you see a video having to do with foreign policy really going viral. It is fair to say, I'm not sure how people in Europe will actually feel hearing this, but it is fair to say that Boris Johnson is having a great Ukrainian war and a great Ukrainian crisis. It is really the high politics theater that he's really good at. He's not really good on details, but this is really the kind of stuff where he can really play out all his kind of Churchillian persona. And to be really fair to him, President Zelensky has really enjoyed the support. The UK has been from the beginning an outspoken supporter of Ukraine. To be fair, the UK has managed to project a more coherent, a more active, a better image than the EU that is prevaricating over a lot of issues when it comes to the crisis in Ukraine. Behind the scenes, Boris Johnson and the UK are taking a leading role in coordinating the supply of armory, of weaponry to Ukraine, which is going to be very important moving forward as we move into the next phase of the war. And of course, the symbolism has been very strong. It really feels like a century ago when Boris Johnson was literally on the brink of losing his prime ministership. Right now, he is able to take a leading role, and Ukraine is really loving him for that. To be fair, until now, the UK has tried to play a constructive role in coordinating with the EU, also in coordinating within NATO. It remains to be seen whether the war in Ukraine will also pave the way for a more durable strategic cooperation between the UK and the EU. For the time being, Boris Johnson has really managed to project himself and place himself in a very prominent role in the Ukrainian crisis. We should expect to see more of him in the crisis as we move forward. If Boris Johnson's visit to Kiev was a really high-profile affair, it was very dramatic, it was about him visiting a war zone and the rest of it, there was another visit by a British official to another country a few weeks before the day that we're recording this and a few weeks before the day when you'll be watching this, that actually is quite important from a more global perspective and is really worth taking a look. So a few weeks ago, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss visited Delhi, India, to have meetings with Indian officials and to discuss the war in Ukraine, among other things. And what is interesting to see in this visit, which wasn't much reported, not even in the UK, but I think it's really important because it provides us a global perspective of, and the global context of the crisis and the war in Ukraine, is how basically Liz Truss was met with not a terribly warm welcome by the Indian government. She really challenged the Indian government for continuing to buy Russian oil Israel, and she really gave the whole kind of all of us democracies have to stick together in a kind of a global alliance of liberal values against authoritarianism and nationalism and expansionism and the rest of it. The problem, however, is that, as India already showcased also in its vote in the UN, where it abstained on condemning the Russian aggression, India really sees things slightly differently. The foreign minister of India was very adamant that it's in India's interest to continue buying oil from Russia. Generally, this was a big reality check for Strauss, and I think for the UK, but also by extension for the EU and also for the Western Alliance at large, that the world is now a much bigger place, and that the West is just one actor among many in a world that does not necessarily see things the way we view them. The perspective from India, and quite importantly, when Liz Truss was there, Sergei Lavrov was also there, which kind of shows you how Russia also knows how to play the global game. The view from India is that we have our interests, and a lot of the things that the Westerners talk about values is not something that always registers with us. This is something to keep in mind, because as the war drags on, the West will need more and more alliances and more cooperation with non-Western powers. Things are not always viewed the same way from outside of Europe and the West than what they are inside. So this was another episode of Bridge the Channel. We're following basically British officials in their travels and their journeys around the world, but in a way that's the whole point of our product, right? We're using the British angle so that we can have a more global, international perspective of the issues that Europe is currently facing. Boris Johnson in Ukraine, Liz Truss in India. This gives you an insight into how a lot of the things that we're facing are now have to be placed in a more international context. We're of course monitoring developments within British domestic politics as well. Brexit is definitely on the back burner for now, but you never know when it will rear its head again. There's a very challenging economic climate as well. We will be following those developments as well in future episodes. Until next time, until we meet again, take care and try wherever you are. If the weather's getting better, as it is getting better in London right now, try to enjoy it as well, because spring is upon us. Take care.